Season 4 is officially in the books, but instead of getting answers, we've been left with even more questions. It definitely feels like it's time to break everything down and make sense of it all. That's why, in each of my upcoming videos, I'm going to pick a few of these burning questions and share my theories with you. Let's dive right into the most pressing one. Who exactly is the boy in white? In the finale, we see him moving around freely, right next to Sophia. It's hard to call them allies. He's clearly on edge whenever she's around, but it doesn't look like a typical intense rivalry either. It feels more like a long, drawn-out game where human beings are just pieces on a chessboard. It's a lot like what we saw back in Kenny's dad's game, except this match between the man in yellow and the boy in white is playing out in real life. The show's creators have hinted, more than once, that the keys to the puzzle are hidden all the way back in Season 1, and in my opinion that chess scene wasn't just symbolic. It was a direct code to understanding everything that's going on. I know what you're thinking. This is just like Lost, where the scenery changes but the core story stays the same, and that's a totally fair point. At the same time, I have a feeling Season 5 might throw some major curveballs our way that will complicate the narrative and take things to a whole new level. We've already gotten a few clues pointing in that direction, and I'm about to break them all down for you. Let's look back at Miranda's drawing, the one we talked about in my last video. We can clearly see 8 children having fun on a playground. By the way, I bet you immediately thought of the exact same swing set where little Victor met the boy in white, and where Sarah and Ethan were playing right before the incident that almost ended in a major setback for the Matthews family. Keep that image in mind because it becomes incredibly symbolic given what I'm going to say next. So now Victor never mentioned any other children in his cycle besides himself and Eloise. We see the exact same pattern in Ethan's story. We met a little girl at the very start of the show, but the town wrapped up her storyline right before Julie and her brother arrived. This means the painting definitely doesn't show regular kids who just happened to wander into Fromville, so we need to dig a little deeper. The Ankooey children instantly come to mind, but there are 2 major contradictions that completely debunk this theory: the number of children and the way they look. That doesn't match the story of the Ankooey children, who, as we remember, were born in the dark and spent their whole lives there. It looks like we're dealing with an illusion they're trapped in. That's a classic move for the man in yellow, who is an absolute master at twisting reality. We saw that perfectly with Henry. My guess is that the Ankooey children might have shown Miranda their illusion, which she then captured in one of her paintings. But what about the number of kids? Every single confirmed mention points to exactly 7 children. We see this in Jade's visions and in Miranda's other drawing with the stones. So, who is this mysterious 8th figure, who, interestingly enough, is drawn separately from the rest? My theory is that one child actually managed to escape their fate. Maybe it was thanks to the hope of the other Ankooey kids. Or perhaps Jade and Tabitha managed to step in and alter the course of events. And I believe that this specific child is none other than the boy in white. Just look at his clothes. They perfectly mirror the outfit of one of the Ankooey children. That resemblance feels way too intentional to be a coincidence. We can find another piece of evidence supporting the theory that there are supposed to be 8 children right on the talisman. Just count the number of what I assume are trees drawn on it. That number definitely isn't random. This is especially true considering we got confirmation in episode 9 of season 4 that Jade and Tabitha are right in the center, and they were the ones trying to save the Ankooey children. If my theory holds water, and they did manage to free someone, why wasn't it their own daughter? It could be a crazy twist of fate, or maybe those 2 just don't remember another member of their family. We know Fromville has a way of locking out or wiping away crucial pieces of memory. Just look at Victor and how he forgot all about Eloise. On top of that, Tabitha didn't recognize her own daughter at first, only after Jade played that melody. At the same time, back in the real world, both Tabitha and Miranda had 2 children, a boy and a girl, leaving Thomas out of the equation, of course. What's more, Fromville has always focused a massive amount of attention on their sons. I don't want to flat out claim that they are all reincarnations of the people from the original story, but there is definitely something fascinating going on here. If I'm right, it explains why the boy in white is specifically tied to Victor and Ethan. They are also children who survived. Then again, Sarah's comment about how she doesn't think the boy in white is an actual child in the traditional sense kind of throws a wrench into this whole theory. Though she might have just meant that he moved up to a whole different league a long time ago, becoming an entity just like the man in yellow. We can interpret those words in a lot of different ways until we finally get official confirmation. This brings us to the question that's been keeping almost every From fan up at night. If the boy in white is on our hero's side, why doesn't he just sit down and explain all the rules of the game? We know one explanation was that after a conversation like that, Christopher became completely overwhelmed, which led to a massive negative turn of events. However, I think there's more to it than just that. It probably has to do with the rules of the game that we don't fully understand. My guess is that the more the boy in white steps in to help, the stronger the opposing force becomes. This turns his every move into a delicate tightrope walk between lending a hand and causing a total breakdown of the system. If that's the case, the best option really is to let the townspeople figure things out on their own. They actually have a much better shot that way. But how did a boy in white from the Ankooey kids even turn into a full-fledged player in the first place? Maybe there's a contract or a deal between him and the man in yellow, and the terms of that deal might be way more complicated than they seem. If the man in yellow loses, the town vanishes and everyone goes free. If the boy in white loses, he rejoins the other Ankooey children, unleashing an even greater dark force onto our world. And that's exactly why, once again, he can't make a direct move. He's not an ally and he's not an enemy. The boy in white is a player forced to follow the rules of a game where every single move comes with a price. The stakes aren't just the safety of the people in Fromville. The entire world could suffer if the man in yellow finally finishes what he started and gains more power. This perfectly explains the boy in white's reaction to Victor surviving. Most likely it was because of him that the cycle kept going, meaning the game isn't over. It also makes it clear why the voices were pushing Sarah to get rid of Ethan. The man in yellow doesn't want a repeat of Victor's story. He wants a definitive win, so he's micromanaging every little detail based on his past experience. So that's the big theory I've put together based on everything we've watched and the awesome ideas you all have shared about the plot. I always take your thoughts into account when I'm scripting these videos, so please don't be shy. Share your own theories down in the comments. In the meantime, let's keep moving forward because the next question is just as fascinating. To get closer to answering this, we need to take a really close look at them first. Right in the center of the talisman, we see Tabitha and Jade. That's a confirmed fact from episode 9. Surrounding them are 8 symbols that look like faraway trees, which very likely represent the number of Ankooey children. On the sides, we also see the sun and the moon, which aren't just there for decoration either. They represent the boundaries set by Fromville. We know all too well that humans have the upper hand during the day, while the shadow figures take the wheel at night. Maybe that's why a sudden shift from day to night happened. Right after our heroes completely ripped out the bottle tree, they broke one of the rules of the game, which gave the man in yellow a totally free hand. This means that back in Miranda's cycle, a completely different rule could have been broken. Not necessarily involving the bottle tree, that triggered the exact same reaction. That would explain why she ended up in the middle of the woods in the dead of night. I also had a theory that she might have gone into the bottle tree a second time, which we already know is a terrible idea, and it ended up throwing her deep into the forest. Honestly, I'm torn between these two theories because they both make a ton of sense and fit the storyline beautifully. But let's leave that aside for a moment and get back to our talismans. My guess is that they appeared as a result of a deal Tabitha and Jade made with an unknown entity or through some kind of cross ritual. The mastermind behind it could have been the man in yellow playing tricks on them, or it could be someone entirely new whom we haven't even met yet. That's why I suspect Jade and Tabitha might actually be behind the creation of the talismans, even if they don't remember it right now. Looking at it from that angle, it makes total sense why the bottle tree doesn't affect how well the talismans work. They belong to completely different storylines. The tree grew out of the hope of the Ankooey children, while the talismans are part of a deal that doesn't depend on it at all. Sophia didn't just gather them all up and throw them into one of the trees for no reason. Doing that is going to seriously weaken our heroes. Interestingly enough, she hadn't done that before. Maybe once again the rules wouldn't allow it. But now that our heroes broke one of the ultimate rules, all bets are off. It turns out the boy in white was absolutely right when he warned that the bottle tree should never be touched under any circumstances. So now it's honestly worrying to imagine just how much power Sophia has gained. We've already seen a glimpse of what might be waiting for our heroes in Victor's drawings. You probably have a completely logical question after all this. If the man in yellow is so incredibly powerful, why doesn't he just override the boy in white altogether? In my opinion, the answer lies in the very nature of Fromville itself. This place is built entirely on balance, and as we've seen time and time again, every force has an equal opposite reaction. If the man in yellow deactivates the boy in white, he breaks the foundational principle holding the entire system together. Doing that might not just cut off his own source of power, it could trigger a massive mirrored reaction. After all, Fromville seems to operate on a pretty simple rule. For every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. That's exactly why neither of them can act directly. Instead, they are forced to influence events through other people, turning them into their own personal pawns. So let's wrap this all up. In my view, Fromville is a massive, incredibly complex system that came about because Jade and Tabitha interfered with the original deal. Most likely, the man in yellow was trying to unleash some ancient dark force or siphon even more power for himself. However, because one of the Ankooey children managed to survive, a portion of that power transferred directly to him instead. That is exactly why the boy in white became a natural counterweight to the man in yellow. Ever since, they've been locked on opposite sides of the same system, completely unable to make a direct move against each other. Instead, they sway events through other people, trying to tip the scales in their own favor. In this whole setup, the Talismans were supposed to maintain that delicate balance, but since the humans decided to alter one of the pieces of the puzzle, the man in yellow earned the right to take that advantage away. What do you think about my theory? I'd love to read your thoughts. Also, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe, because there's going to be plenty more videos like this one coming up. Thanks for watching and being so active, and I'll see you in the next video.